Hello everyone and welcome back to Story of the World Highlights. We're currently looking at Chapter 5. In Chapter 5, we were in a different region of the world. Instead of being in Europe in the New World, we're over in Asia, specifically Japan. Now, Japan at this time was constantly at war with itself. And that's because Japan was divided into many regions, and each region was ruled by somebody called a daimyo. Now, these daimyo rulers, just like the ones in Europe, really wanted to expand their land and gain more land and power. And so they were constantly at war trying to do this. Now, one of the big things you need when you are fighting a war is you need soldiers, you need people. And so there was a group of people in Japan who were very well-trained warriors, and those were called the samurai. And the samurai decided to offer their services to the daimyo that could pay the most. So daimyos with lots of money and resources could afford samurai support, and the samurai support usually guaranteed a win for them. Now, out of all of these wars, there ended up being a few daimyo that really stood successful over a lot of the wars. And one of them, notably, was a man called Nobunaga. So Nobunaga was one of the daimyo who was really successful at the time during these wars. And he took notice of one of his really good soldiers. And that soldier's name was Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi worked so hard and well for Nobunaga that he got promoted consistently. And eventually he became his right-hand man, his number one guy. And so Hideyoshi helped fight a lot. He was a favorite of Nobunaga. And eventually, when Nobunaga died, a lot of the samurai and people that supported him decided to support his grandson in taking over in his place. Kind of like in Europe, when a king dies, their son becomes the next ruler. Similar idea. But Hideyoshi said, no. I know what to do. I can win the battles. So he decided to actually, with 200 soldiers, go and challenge the samurai who were protecting the grandson and ended up winning. And so now Hideyoshi was the leader of all of that territory and land that Nobunaga had won during his time in the wars. And so the big saying that Hideyoshi had said was, if the cuckoo doesn't sing, I will make it sing. And this was sort of an example of his leadership style. And so he would fight for what he wanted by force. Now, Hideyoshi, just like some of our European rulers at the time, was not happy with just the land that he had. He wanted to expand more. And this time he had his eyes set across the water in China. He decided that they were going to conquer China. Now, to do this, their idea was to go through Korea in order to attack China. They thought going through Korea would be easy. But to their surprise, it wasn't. The Koreans fought back, and they used even their famous tortoise ships to go and attack the Japanese that were trying to come in. As they were fighting the Japanese at sea, China was also coming into Korea to help support against the Japanese. The Japanese did have to turn around, and on their second attempt, they also failed to go through Korea because this time Hideyoshi had died during the second attempt. So he dies during the second attempt, and all of his soldiers retreated. Now, when Hideyoshi died, his son was left in charge, and his son was named Hideyori. Now, Hideyori was supported by some people, but there was another general during the time of Nobunaga that was also strong, and his name was Ieyasu. Now, Ieyasu had supported Hideyoshi and stayed patient and calm, and when Hideyoshi died, Ieyasu said, it's my chance now. I'm going to go and take over. So there was a group of people that supported Hideyori in being the next leader, and there was a group of people that supported Ieyasu as being the next leader. And so there became a war between the two sides. Now, Ieyasu had secretly made a deal with some of the daimyos who supported Hideyori. And so when the battle came to happen, a lot of those daimyos ended up turning on their soldiers and samurai and fighting with Ieyasu. So Ieyasu did win. And when Ieyasu won, he realized that there were still two things to be nervous about that might stop him from staying in power. And the first thing was the samurai. He did not want someone else to hire the samurai and attack him. So he decided to make a rule that samurai could no longer be warriors. Instead, they had to go and study things like the arts and poetry and sciences. And he even had them start doing wrestling. And that is where sumo wrestling comes from. Sumo wrestlers used to be the samurai that would fight for the daimyo. So that was out of the way. He solved the problem of the samurai. But he still had the second problem, and that was that Hideyoshi was still alive. And as long as he was alive, he could challenge Ieyasu's leadership and power. At the time when Hideyoshi had lost, he and a few of his followers retreated to Osaka in the south. And they stayed there in fear that if they left, Ieyasu might try to kill him. And they lived there for quite some time with no conflict. But eventually, Ieyasu wanted to eliminate that final potential threat, and he went down to Osaka with some soldiers, and they did end up killing Hideyoshi. And so that is the story of what was happening at that time and how Ieyasu became one of the most prominent leaders in Japan at the time. That's it for Chapter 5. I'll see you next time for Chapter 6. Bye.